Hi, I'm Derek T. Dingle, Executive Vice President and Chief Content Officer for Black Enterprise. Welcome to an all-new episode of Boardroom Chats, hosted by Nationwide. In this edition, we reveal how the commitment to racial equity has reached the highest levels of corporate America through the Board Challenge. To discuss this development, my guest is a business leader who has spent more than 20 years operating at the intersection of media and innovation. As one of Black Enterprise's top tech influencers, Guy Primus created and launched the virtual reality company, a transformative force in Silicon Valley and Hollywood. VRC raised $23 million in venture capital and teamed with entertainment powerhouses Universal Studios and Steven Spielberg's Amblin Entertainment. Together, they produced Jurassic World VR Expedition, an experience first released through Dave & Buster's, where it quickly became the most successful attraction in the company's 38-year history. Under his leadership, VRC also partnered with Apple to showcase the power of augmented reality through the company's Follow Me Dragon app. It was part of the iPhone X launch and featured in Apple stores nationwide before being named its best of 2017. His current role is CEO at Valence Enterprises, a venture-backed company that creates new paths to success for Black professionals. His vision for Valence helps secure investors, including Silicon Valley Bank and SoftBank. Since taking the reins of Valence, the company has released a suite of community-focused tools to accelerate and further member and financial growth. A board member of Southern California Public Radio, where he serves as a member of the Nominating and Governance Committee and chairperson of the Strategic Planning Committee, Guy has been focused on diversifying the boardrooms of corporate America. He co-founded the Board Challenge, a movement to improve the representation of Black corporate directors at public and private companies. Since last September, he has been responsible for some of the nation's leading CEOs to commit to adding a Black director to their board. He is here today to share his views on the state of boardroom diversity and inclusion. Guy, thank you for joining us today.
It was my pleasure, Derek. Good to see you.
Yeah, really excited. Want to spend a couple of minutes talking about your experiences in Silicon Valley. Share with us, the virtual reality company, how you grew that, your partnerships in media and innovation, and why that was an important platform to then go into Valence, which we'll talk about right after you share a bit of your history.
Right. So I think if I rewind many years, I was grew up in Pittsburgh. My mother was a teacher, and my father worked at TWA, so he worked the late shift at the airport, which was almost an hour away from our house. And so when I would come home, I would come home to an empty house, since the time I was 5 years old. And so I had the little key ring on the belt. I think my parents would be arrested right now if they let me do that. But, I used to come home at 5 and 6 years old and immediately just turn on the television. And so, I grew up watching a lot, inordinate amount of television, honestly, and, was just really attracted to media and entertainment from a young age. But I was also really good at math and science. And so I kind of have spent the past, kind of 40 plus years aspiring to be Ted Turner, right? And Ted Turner for me was, he embodied what it looked like when you combine technology, which at the time was cable television, with content, right? So he bought the MGM library and, owned the Atlanta Braves and put all this great content on the air. And so I've been, for the past several decades looking for what I've called my Ted Turner moment. And so as it relates to the virtual reality company, the first time I experienced virtual reality, it blew my mind, right? It was a demo that Robert Stromberg, who eventually became my co-founder in the virtual reality company, put together. And Rob is one of the most creative people that you'll ever meet. He created the world for Avatar for James Cameron, right? And won an Academy Award for that. And then, for the first time in the history of the Academy Awards, he won a second Academy Award, a second Oscar for production design for Alice in Wonderland. So imagine that creativity put inside of a virtual medium and telling a story And when I saw that, it was just, again, it was a game changing for me because it was exactly what I've been looking for: technology and content in a way that really just opened new worlds to people. And so that was an amazing journey. We raised several millions of dollars and created some incredible projects. We actually created an experience called Raising a Ruckus, which Steven Spielberg came up with the concept for, and was written by Nicole Perlman. And so we released that to a lot of fanfare and critical acclaim. We followed that by releasing Follow Me Dragon, which was released on Apple's with iPhone 10 and was in Apple stores from coast to coast, and won us a Best of 2017 award for Apple, right? So this innovation is starting to take off at the virtual reality company. And then we did something that was really really big. It was Jurassic, actually. So we actually did Jurassic World VR Expedition that was released at Dave & Buster's. And in the 38-year history of Dave & Buster's, it was the biggest attraction launch in the company's history. When we announced it, their stock price jumped up by 30%. And then at the end of the first quarter, their stock price was up 59% based on this single release, which was, again, ushering in a new era of entertainment to this location-based entertainment system. And so that's what we built at the virtual reality company, and still going strong. And we're working right now, I'm still on the board there, but we're working on Godzilla versus Kong, a release that will happen in the fourth quarter of this year. But what I wanted to do was actually in the wake of all the events last year, right? So think about kind of COVID hitting and it decimating the Black community, and unemployment rates skyrocket, and Black folks are dying at an inordinate rate. And then you think about what happened on Memorial Day, right? George Floyd and Mr. Cooper there in Central Park. And to me, it became a calling that it wasn't enough to just focus on entertainment. I needed to get into the game and really start changing the world. And the best way I knew to do that was to tell stories and really focus on kind of helping people navigate their paths to success, which is something that I've been doing as a mentor, for several decades now. So that's how I ended up at Valence, and really want to bring that sensibility of popular culture, technology, and innovation to people's career paths and development.
Yeah, and as such, you've been a pioneer in Silicon Valley, an area that has been a really challenged space for particularly African American entrepreneurs to gain financing, and you broke that wall and that barrier. Share with me Valence and how that marries that experience of trying to penetrate that venture capital wall with presenting opportunities, particularly to Black entrepreneurs and professionals.
Right. Well, that's a good question. I appreciate it, because if you think about what we're building at Valence, we have a community of 14,000, ideally headed to hundreds of thousands and millions of people on this platform that are really united around one goal, which is to move themselves forward professionally and then move the broader Black community forward professionally. And so what we've done as it relates to funding and connecting entrepreneurs and investors is we created something called the Valence Funding Network, which is around, let's see, it's now 50 or so top tier virtual venture capital firms, right? So everyone from GGV and Upfront who have invested in Valence to Sequoia and Defy Partners and you name it, they're on our platform. And so they have put their hands up and said, hey, we understand that there's a problem. We understand that Black folks are not getting a fair shake as it relates to the venture capital markets. And so we want to put up our hands, and we want you, Valence, to connect us with entrepreneurs who you feel are doing something different and are worthy of investment, because we don't know who they are. And we see things through a lens that might not really represent what the true intentions and true capabilities of those entrepreneurs are. And so we've done that, and it's really been incredible to see the response. So we do every Friday, we do an event called Founders Only, where we connect the founders themselves, but then we actually help understand and filter and direct some of those investment dollars to companies that we feel kind of have been involved and engaged and really are deserving of those investment dollars.
Share a couple of companies that you are proudest of in terms of making those connections and putting them on the path.
Well, I don't want to single anyone out, but I'll focus on one of our kind of spotlight members. So okay. Dave Salvant at Squire. They've kind of done an incredible job of bringing the platform of barbershop management online. And again, I think that when people first looked at them, they saw them, as a Black company, right? Because Dave is Black, and kind of the founding team is Black, and so they see them as a Black company. But when you talk to Dave, he'll let you know this is not about a Black barbershop. We can do this for every single barbershop. And so again, I really hesitate to answer that question because I don't want to take credit for anyone's success. Dave and his team would be successful regardless of their involvement with Valence, for certain. But again, being part of their success and helping to tell their story is something that is very, very meaningful, right? So that's one company on the kind of Black founder end. But then if you look at what's happening on the diversity and inclusion end as well, there's a company called Valence that we partner with, and they actually provide all of our video services, right? So our video conferencing services. Bevy actually went to market several weeks ago, and just last week announced that they raised a $40 million round, and 24 of the 40 investors were Black, right? So 70% or so of the investors were Black. And they just have done an incredible job of going from 0 Black employees to a goal of having 20% of their workforce being Black. And so again, I think really when we look at what we're trying to do is really about an ecosystem, right? People call it a pipeline. And I shun that term because a pipeline suggests one input and one output, and they suggest a homogeneous product. And what I believe is that every individual is different and every individual journey is different. And so we need to use data, and we need to use community, and we need to use the connections that we have to help shepherd each individual along their respective path to success and of success, because it's a journey and not a destination. But we really kind of want to focus on the individual paths and making those connections where they're appropriate.
Well, where ideas and innovation meet access and connections,
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's great. And what's great about your story and great about your focus is it's been evolutionary. Obviously you looked at entrepreneurial success in the virtual realm, then you use your experiences in Silicon Valley to create this platform, to build this ecosystem. And then the next level is to bring in more diversity on the board level.
Right.
So we're at September 2020.
Right.
What sparked, the board challenge? What led up to that? I know there's, obviously we had the aftermath of the George Floyd tragedy and the ensuing protests, but what sparked you to say, we need to have this board challenge to drive greater boardroom diversity?
Right. So I'm going to focus on one thing that you said, which was my path being evolutionary. And actually, I agree with that. It's actually really incredible. I call it a focused evolution, right? Because I'm still the same kid I was growing up in Pittsburgh, reading Games magazine and playing with Legos, right? That's who I am. Now it's business model analysis and rapid prototyping. That's what I do. But this evolution, to me, and where the board challenge started was conversations at Harvard Business School 20 years ago. So one of my classmates, a gentleman by the name of Brad Gerstner, and I were classmates. Brad runs a investment company called Altimeter. And Altimeter, has been very, very successful in making investments in Silicon Valley and has built a very, very diverse network. And so Brad, who's the CEO, is also on the board of United Airlines and iHeartMedia and several other companies. But he actually took his son to a Black Lives Matter rally in Palo Alto, right? So Brad is a white guy, and he took his son Lincoln, named after Abraham Lincoln, to this rally in Palo Alto. And Lincoln, being a pretty astute 14-year-old kid, turns to his dad and said, "Dad, this is incredible. I'm so glad you brought me here. But what are you going to do? You have all this influence. You have all all these resources. What are you going to do to change things?" And so I wish I could take credit for the board challenge, but it was actually Brad's idea, spurred upon by his son wanting him to make a change. And so Brad and I have known each other and again have been friends for 20 years. And Brad, knowing what I was doing at Valence, picked up the phone and said, "Hey, I want to make a change. I'm not exactly sure how, but I'd love for you to kind of go along this journey with me." And so he called me and Sukhinder Singh Cassidy, who runs the board list. And we actually just got together for several months before September and planned and plotted and really kind of thought about this using what is kind of one of Valence's hallmarks right now, which is Black success built together. And I was telling him kind of, some of the legacy challenges that we have as a Black community and how we need to overcome them. And that is kind of being a participant in the success of every individual, right? So and starting with where we can make the biggest influence, which is on the board level. Brad being on several boards himself, I'm on several boards, and understanding how we can use our networks to place one individual at a time in a very, very influential position, and then making that effect have a cascading effect, throughout the business ecosystem. And so that's where the genesis of the idea was. But really, again, this is about using the resources that we have, which is capital and social capital, to just place individuals who can and are willing to stand up and make a change and actually represent Blacks in the most powerful institutions in the world, which are corporate America.
So you got some of the largest companies or CEOs of the largest companies to make a pledge to add a Black board member, at least one Black board member, to their board over this year. So starting in September, so September 2020 to now September 2021. Tell me how that process, how you went about that process of getting those pledges and where you are right now. So it's been several months in. Where are we now with the board challenge, the pledges, and the number of companies that have participated in the board challenge?
Yeah, so it's pretty amazing. And again, the genesis was us picking up the phone one telephone call at a time and talking to, again, not only CEOs. So Rich Barton was, again, one of the first CEOs from Zillow, was one of the first CEOs that Brad reached out to. And he said, hey, Rich, I have this challenge. What do you think? And Rich said, count me in. And so he signed up for it immediately. And again, when you have a company like Zillow, who's a Silicon Valley darling and a unicorn, it's easy to get other people on board to support you. And so, we started there, one call at a time, several meetings, explaining what we're doing. Very, very simple ask, right? Just appoint a Black board member if you don't have one. And if you do have one, just support and kind of put your hand up and saying, we are in favor of this. And we're going to maintain our posture of having our practice of having a representative board. So that's really what the board challenge is. And it, again, started off with several dozen companies. And now we kind of, once the easy work was done, once the low hanging fruit was picked, then we had to start going out and looking at some of the companies that really should be have Black board members, but maybe they don't. And I think they're probably, a lot of them are unaware of some of the challenges that they would face, because what you'll see is that people will say, well, we don't have one because we can't find a qualified Black board member. And so we kind of sought to dispel that rumor. And we connected with a bunch of companies, the Board List and Bolster and Above Board and Him for Her, and just a myriad of companies who can connect those companies who are saying, hey, we just don't know where to look with Black talent. So we're solving this in a very systematic way, just like any CEO would solve a problem. If the CEO is paying attention to it and you approach it like a business problem, it can be solved. And so that's kind of how we're going to market now. We actually started with a list that, again, Black Enterprise puts out every year, which is, kind of a list of the top companies that don't have Black board members. And we took that list, we updated it, and we started reaching out to those individual companies, right, to say, hey, we're aware, where are you in this, right? So these companies, we're not out to shame or embarrass anyone, but it's a very, very systematic approach, one by one, of adding Black members to these boards. And then when we want to celebrate the success of any Black board member that kind of goes on to a board. So my friend Ann Sompowski Ward, when she went on a board, or Salam Coleman Smith or Mark Tatum, we want to celebrate all of that. And we recognize that one individual success is the community success. And so that's how we're moving forward. And I would say that, the goal is to have, 100 Black board members appointed by this time, or excuse me, within 1 year. And I think we're definitely on track to do that. We have a lot of work to do, because you can imagine as you start treading up the mountain, the path gets steeper and rockier and the air gets thinner. But I think we're going to hit that 100 number by September.
So we're in the process of developing our next list. So hopefully we'll see the changes that have been brought about by the board challenge in terms of the numbers and the percentages.
Well, again, like Black success built together. We're all building on, we're all standing on the shoulders of giants. And so we would not be here if not for the work of ELC, if not for the work of Black Enterprise and Ebony, kind of before us. And so Valence, the board challenge, all of us are standing on the shoulders of giants, and we need to recognize the success. We need to stay in contact. That list of 70 plus executives that put the ad in the New York Times, making sure that they're aware of what we're doing. And we talked to, I would say, a third to a half of those individuals on that list, and they're so very, very supportive from day one. And so again, celebrating success, building Black success together, and recognize we're standing on the shoulders of giants is how we're going to get there.
Well, I think a great part of your thrust is to also challenge the whole process of recycling board members, because when you look at for years we've been looking at Black board representation, and for years it's been the same names that have come up. Right. But it seems like your process has not only changed some of the names, brought in new Black directors, but also looked at beyond the S&P 500 to the Russell 2000, to right. companies that may be a part of portfolios of private equity. Was that the intent also in terms of developing this process?
I mean, not only, it was, I think it's critical. Because if you look at the evolution of, and again, I want to, again, standing on the shoulders of giants, Shelley Archambault, Ken Frazier, Barry Lawson Williams, right? And just to name a couple people that I've engaged with during the course of this process, and them recognizing what you just said, which is, recycling Black board members is helpful, but it really doesn't increase the sphere of influence and power. And so really understanding that as we move further down this path of the innovation economy and AI and machine learning and computer vision and AR, right? The people that to whom those technologies are native, were not born in the 60s like I was, right? I was born in 69, but some of those folks are really good, and again, God bless the path that they've laid for us. But the people that are coming behind us are really digital natives in a lot of ways. And when you're looking at the next Facebook, or you're looking at the next Oculus, or you're looking at the next Instagram, those companies are coming and they need people that are native and they understand how to use the technology and are using it on a daily basis. And so as we navigate the path and we look at, again, beyond Fortune 500 and Russell 3000 to the companies that are inside the portfolio companies inside of GGV or inside of Carlyle and kind of are aspiring to kind of break out and become public and become household names. Those companies need to be paid particular attention to, because no one was thinking about Amazon this time, 25 years ago. It wasn't a household name, right? I'm sure that, in the Seattle area where they were making a bunch of noise, but, outside it wasn't a household name yet. But Google, I remember when, kind of being at CMJ when Google kind of I saw their first booth, right, in New York at the Javits Center. And, it wasn't a household name, and Google staying in beta for so long. Those companies need new, different, kind of elevated technologically thinking, right? And again, not that they can't get that from the current cache of board members, but different thinking is how you gain a competitive advantage. And so we definitely want to advocate for that.
Well, but at the same time, what you're doing is helping to seed board membership for companies that are going to develop into the next Googles or the next Facebooks. And that also helps bring down the barriers to diversity in Silicon Valley, especially at the board level. When right. you start off when a company is private and then advance and evolve with the company as it goes public as a board member. And there's a wealth building component in that as well.
Yeah, and I think it's, again, I look at this as an ecosystem. So absolutely, that is, again, it's a critical piece of success. It has to happen that a company starts at, in some garage or some apartment in New York City, and they, raise friends and family, and, then they raise their first round of venture capital. And then, the next thing you know, they're a household name. But it doesn't happen like that for us, unfortunately. And so, yes, we need to make a really, really big deal about appointing Black board members to some of these companies inside of venture capital portfolios where they can have outsized influence early on. And then to your point, to increase the diversity and kind of the participants in this ecosystem, those CEOs need to be recognized, right? So that's what we try to do at Valence. I know Black Enterprise, you guys do a fantastic job, but I had someone the other day that didn't know that Tope at Calendly was a Black guy, right? They just didn't know that, wait a minute, the founder of Calendly is Black? Or yes, so that's the kind of thing that we want to erase. We want to make sure that we not only are knowledgeable about who the people are in this ecosystem, and again, my board member Hans Tung at GGV and Kobe Fuller at Upfront, they've been real giant catalysts in this movement, right? Hans is, they call him the unicorn whisperer, and he, kind of has taken, I think he took 3 or 4 companies public just last year. And so the fact that he's on my board and he is kind of actively seeking to participate in this ecosystem of Black success is critical. And Kobe, the original inception of the idea for Valence came from Kobe. And we talked about it for years before he brought it to market. And, kind of, I hope I was helpful in helping him move his thinking along. But that's the kind of, these ideas don't start big. They start small. And we need to recognize and fund and kind of fertilize those ideas and water them and make sure they get sunlight, because they can grow to be unicorns. Calendly will be a unicorn. It will be a $1 billion company. And we need to be part of the success. All of us need to be part of their success.
At the heart of what you're doing and at the heart of what you've done for years is communicate that, you need the diversity in order to have the ideas, in order to go into different directions, different areas, to be a part of the entire, as you said, ecosystem, so that you can create shareholder value, so you can create opportunities. One area that you've looked at is, also special acquisition companies, they're called SPACs, so that they can look at different types of companies that they want to invest in, different ways to, acquire companies and to create, new industries and what have you. So this is totally revolutionary in redesigning not only corporate America, but global business.
No question. And again, I love the way you phrase that, because SPACs are a vehicle for companies to become public. And it doesn't take Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan or any other big bank to recognize, Morgan Stanley, to recognize the value of them to the market. And again, all of those companies, just to be clear, Silicon Valley Bank, all of those companies are doing great work, and they're recognizing where some of the challenges are. But again, a lot of them are not boots on the ground. And so you have people like Omar Johnson and Colin Kaepernick, and they have the ability to kind of, Omar was number 3 at Beats by Dre. Mm-hmm. He sees things differently. There's no question. Colin Kaepernick put himself in harm's way, tanked his career because he sees things differently. And so when you bring that to a SPAC and they're able to see an opportunity, a diamond in the rough that no one else, kind of has paid attention to, it's magical. And again, them bringing their investment resources to a SPAC, finding a company, taking it public is fantastic. And again, to go back to Brad, who was the the rightful founder of the Board Challenge, he made it a purposeful event that he wanted to add a Black woman to his first SPAC and his second SPAC, and he's done it, right? So Aisha Dozie, who is running Bossy Cosmetics, was kind of and is on the board of Brad's first SPAC at Altimeter. And wow. So just imagine now she's getting all this experience, and she can bring that back to Bossy, and she can disseminate that expertise to everyone in her network. And again, we don't have those opportunities if not for SPACs, right? Right now, and there are a lot of them. There may be too many of them, but it doesn't matter, because the experience is valuable, and bringing that back into the community and increasing the velocity of knowledge, just like we seek to increase the velocity of money within the community, is invaluable. It's only going to help us accelerate our success.
Well, what's exciting about this for us at Black Enterprise is how it will change the dynamics of Black ownership, Black wealth building, putting more African Americans in positions to be in the emerging industries and to grow wealth and influence so that they can impact other companies as well.
Well, I mean, it's great content for you guys, honestly, right? So every CEO that goes public and, every founder that gets some financing, just means better content, more engagement for the community, more investment dollars, more advertising revenue for you, which allows you to grow your circulation, right? So again, we all win here. We all win. when just one Black board member gets appointed to a board and has influence and can make the changes that he, she, or they see fit.
Well, let me touch on a couple of other areas. I know we have a tight period of time here, and you've been great. One, I want to talk about the impacts of boards, especially with some issues that are coming up. You talked about recently the whole thrust in terms of getting corporate America to respond to the restrictive voting laws that are being developed. You're starting with the Georgia law, and then we're looking at some other some other states. Share with us how the board has an impact on decisions like that are made by corporations, whether to be vocal about issues like that,
Right.
from your vantage point.
You know what? I'll convey two anecdotal, kind of stories that were told to me and I witnessed. Right. So the first one was, I don't know if you guys remember this Facebook ad boycott that happened, right?
Yeah.
And it was pretty remarkable to see the companies that participated in the ad boycott. And if you kind of look at the board members who are serving in those companies, it was very, very clear that those guys were well respected and super influential, right? So you look at just two companies, VF and Verizon, right? And there was one board member that was shared between, right? So Shelley Archambault is kind of on a number of boards and near and dear to my heart, right? One of the people who I aspire to be. And Shelley, you could tell that inside of Verizon, she had in the CEO's ear and the board's ear because they participated in the ad boycott. The other guy was Clarence Otis Jr., right? So Clarence and Shelley, I'm sure got together. And again, they haven't verified this, but you look at, two companies, VF and Verizon, and they both participated. And you know that those well-respected board members who have the ear of the CEO and the ear of the rest of the board and are well-respected can exert outsized influence. And so that's the first anecdote. The second one was, one of my longtime mentors, right, for 30 plus years, Rodney Adkins, who's chairman of Avnet and on the board of UPS and Grainger and several other companies.
One of our Black Enterprise top executives of the year when he was over at IBM.
We call him Goldenrod, right? Because he and I share a fraternity lineage, and so Rodney's the founder of our chapter, and again, he has now hundreds of people looking up to him from a different angle, not just the kind of fraternity at Georgia Tech, but actually the impact that he is having as a board member. And so when all this was happening, he and Peggy Alford, who's on the board of Facebook, again, to kind of two people on the same, the same wavelength at PayPal, and kind of looking at this and saying, how can we make a difference? And so when PayPal made their $560 million pledge to, kind of invest in the Black community and Black business, Peggy and Rod were at the epicenter of that conversation. And he picked up the phone and called me and said, hey, how was the message received? How did this go over with the Valence community? And so again, I know that they're having tough conversations, but they're made a lot easier when you have that relationship and when you've earned the respect. And again, these are not insignificant changes, and putting your company on the line, especially as it relates to the Georgia voter laws, right? Everyone's coming at those guys in Georgia right now. And so, Ed Bastian, I stand up and kind of salute them. I hopefully these decisions are easier as it goes along, because no one wants to be on the wrong side of history. And I think that's the way to look at it. But you need vocal advocates on those boards. So on Delta's board, there are vocal advocates, right? So he's going to check in. He's not going to do that without checking in with his board. I can guarantee you that. So making sure that every board has representation. And again, it's Black for me, right? I was born Black. I'm going to die Black. But it's about having a representative board and checking in with that board and making sure you have the people that are really standing up and representing what's right and being on the right side of history, not only for the company, but for culture and society.
You talk about the right side of history, but I have two areas of concern. One is recently I saw the report about companies that were not in favor of having racial equity audits, if you will. They made pledges, but on the other side, they said, I don't see why we need to have racial equity audits. Want to get your impressions of that. And then also being on the right side of history, we're at a time when we're at an all-time low, nadir, in terms of African-American CEOs of the largest publicly traded companies. I want to get your impressions on those two things. why would we not have the audits if we have the pledges? And then two, how do we get the boards to step up and increase the leadership of companies from the CEO's level?
Right. So I'll take the first one because I have a slightly jaded perspective on that, which is America, corporations, boardrooms are all made up of individuals, right? Franchisees of restaurants. This happens all the time. It had, the manager of a Starbucks. I know Howard Schultz and I know his heart, right? And you can see Howard's executive staff and what it has looked like since I worked there, kind of in the early 2000s. He has the best of intentions, right? But at the management level, whether it's a store manager or the CEO, people think differently, right? There's no question. And I'll say I observed it, right? From one of the biggest retailers in the history of the world, I observed what I believe to be racist behavior from the CEO. And so it's easy to kind of use that as an excuse. Yes, we signed this pledge and we wrote, this small check and, we opened a store in this area. But what does that individual believe? What's between their ears? How have they been raised? And there's no question, because we see that they're in society. They're in every police department and fire station and court, C-suite in America, right? So to believe that that's not the case is I think naive, and understanding that those individuals are making some of the decisions, right? So that's a slightly jaded perspective. Okay. As relates to getting executives into the C-suite, right? So at least there's some deflection. There's some shared, kind of goal and difference of opinion. And ideally, that variety of experience and opinion helps lead to better outcomes. But it really starts with, again, I don't use the word pipeline, but this ecosystem of getting solid education, and I won't take it back there, filling the engineering and business pipelines and legal pipelines with great minds, and not, kind of distracting them and going, with other pursuits when they're kind of well suited to the boardroom, and just making, kind of investments at every phase along the way. Again, I'm focused on the board because I can have influence there, but we at Valence, we'll also be announcing our executive leadership community in the next few weeks, because everyone takes care of the people at the top, right? It's very easy. People follow them and they're charismatic. But what about the people that aren't exposed to the impact that they can have and don't know how to go about being on boards, right? Let's not wait till someone is 40 years old to have the conversation about being on a board. Let's start that conversation in third grade, right? Because that you do it with student council. Let's do it, kind of along the way. It's not just about being the president of the United States. I want people to start thinking about, yes, I want to be Omar Johnson. I want to be the chief marketing officer at Beats by Dre. I see that guy, and I love the fact that he wears sneakers all the time, right? Or Rodney Atkins, right? It's great that he has a statue dedicated to him at Georgia Tech. Everyone, before they step foot on campus at Georgia Tech, needs to know who Rodney Atkins is. His story of how he, kind of came from Florida and went to Georgia Tech and IBM and did all these great things, and then went back to Florida, right? So people need to know these stories, and so that's how we start. It's not one kind of a silver bullet. Everyone needs to understand and take a survey of where they are and how they can influence this and actually do something, right? Do what Brad's son implored him to do. What are you going to do about it? What is it that you can do today? James Lowry, one of our board members at Valence, he asked me all the time, this is great. We're talking about this, and, I've read his book and the whole 9 yards. And I really try to live by the words in his book. But he asked me all the time, what are you going to do on Monday morning? What are you going to do about it? And so that's what I think we need to take a step back and really, kind of appreciate as individuals, as leaders of organizations, as leaders of company, and leaders of men, women, and children. And again, that's why I appreciate being here, because you guys are actually stepping up. Yes, it's your business, but you don't have to be talking to me about this. There are 1,000 other people that are more interesting than me. But the fact that you're talking to me, shows me that there's hope. And as long as we all step up and recognize what we can do as individuals to make a change.
But this has been a powerful conversation. Last question. You talked a lot about the whole process of course, the importance of being on boards, getting into leadership. It's about grooming. It's about mentorship. It's about sponsorship, relationships. Getting onto that first board. It may not be a corporate board, so to speak. Share with us, before you have to leave, your experiences of one, getting on a board, gaining the training that was necessary to be just an effective board member, not even looking at the diversity element and mission orientation, but being an effective board member, and how others can take from your experience how they can get on the screen to be on the board, and then once they get on the board, become effective so that they can go to the next board and then gain entree into corporate and business leadership.
Yeah, I think it all starts, kind of, I'm going to take it in reverse order. I think it really all starts with understanding what is important to each organization and understanding how you, again, as an individual, can help move that, kind of ball down the field, kind of using the sports metaphor. So understanding that, in a corporate environment, profitability is key, growth is key, revenue and earnings, all that stuff, and understand how the game is played, right? So understanding the rules of engagement is critical. And so that's the kind of the end game, and understanding how you as an individual fit into, that puzzle, and understanding where you would best fit, right? Which is, kind of, it varies, right? Someone, my friend Ted Wood, as an IP attorney, and I, we have technology in common, but his training as a lawyer is not my training as an engineer. So we have different, kind of perspectives on what we would bring to a board. So understanding that is critical. And then preparation obviously is key, right? So poring over, spending hours and hours reading annual reports, reading industry and analysis and analyst reports, looking at the financial statements, all of that. You need to understand what you're saying when you kind of go into the boardroom. So I think that's, kind of the end game, and understanding preparation is key, whether it's career preparation and understanding, again, approaching this as a business problem and how would you solve this problem and what do you bring to the table, and are you the best person even, right? So if you're not, recognize that and maybe look for a different board opportunity. But if I rewind to my path to board service, I can trace it back to very distinct points. So there was me coming out of graduate school and Don Ratliff being willing to kind of sponsor me to the College of Engineering, the IE Master's program, which he did. And John Manrod at A.T. Kearney saying, hey, you're a big fish in a small pond. Let me sponsor you to come on board to A.T. Kearney and let us send you back to Harvard Business School. I can point to those. I can point to presenting to the NPR board and Del Lewis, kind of sitting on that board and being so proud that, there's a Black CEO of NPR. And I can point to going into Starbucks boardroom and seeing Olden Lee from Pepsi and Melody Hobson, who is, kind of the queen, like honestly is, if you think of all that she's done for Black corporate America and the influence that she's exhibited, is really incredible. And so kind of, I can point to those moments, but more importantly, personally, Gary May, who is the chancellor of UC Davis, is a friend, right? So he's just a bit older than me, but I think we share a Midwest, sensibility. We share a love for engineering and analysis. And Gary and I were friends. And one day he said, hey, I think you'd be a really great candidate for the board of the School of Industrial Engineering at Georgia Tech.
Relationships, yeah.
Yeah, and so I said, hey, put me in, coach. Tell me where to be, and I'm there, right? So the head of the school called me, and I said yes, and that led to me, kind of working through the School of Industrial Engineering Advisory Board, actually becoming chairman of that advisory board a few years later, and because of that, I was put on Gary's advisory board when he was dean of College of Engineering at Georgia Tech, which then led to me being on the president's advisory board at Georgia Tech, which then led to me being on the kind of the board of Southern California Public Radio, and me chairing the strategic planning committee, me founding companies, me advising companies, and me being invited to boards. Some of them I accept, some of them I turn down. But it really is an evolution, to use the word that you used before, understanding how you fit in, what your contributions are, and putting in the work to build the relationships and the understanding of what is the objective of each individual organization, and then working like hell to make sure that you can help achieve that objective, right? So knowing what the CEO pays attention to, knowing what the board dynamics are, and then really working to ensure that you contribute uniquely and at the highest level possible. When you're there, without saying too much, right? You don't want to get on the board and just start blabbing and proving how much you know, but actually really providing tangible results and benefits to the board is the way to go.
This is great, Guy. Are there any last comments that you'd like to make in terms of the importance of either board diversity or getting on a board, or comments that you like to share with our audience that you haven't gotten a chance to share it up to
Yeah,
this
you know
point.
what? I'll say this. I'm generally, believe it or not, a man of few words. And so I think it really is important, again, to the viewers of this video and your other videos, to the readers of the magazine, the attendees at your conference, I would say start young, right? Start not only young in your career, but start with your kids and helping them understand, kind of how to read, kind of stock charts and understand how to read annual reports, right? One of my friends, is a CEO of a company, a startup, not a startup, but a kind of growth stage bakery in New York called B Cake NY. And she sent this really incredible gift for Black History Month, and it was these cake jars, and then it was wrapped in this incredible packaging. And at the top of it was a brochure that kind of was a Black history, kind of moments, kind of moment by moment look at some of the careers of some of the most influential people in Black history. Reginald Lewis to Max Roach, right? So before I let my kids eat the cake, I made them read one of the passages just to make sure that they understood who Reginald Lewis was. That's the one I picked. But understanding what he meant to me when I read, why should white guys have all the fun, and how I channeled him when I did my interview at Harvard Business School, because I was one of these guys that I didn't have the best, I didn't have the 4.0, undergraduate at Georgia Tech. They used to tell you, look to your right, look to your left. One of you won't be here by the time it's time to graduate, right? So that was the mindset at Georgia Tech at the time that I was there. But I did some things that I read about in Reginald Lewis's book, and kind of knowing that I could share that and have that bond with my son, and that we could have that common frame of reference and this textually mediated discourse. He's not going to read Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun probably for another, maybe 2 years. Hopefully he reads it by then. But at least we have a frame of reference of this guy who worked his ass off and, kind of started off in Baltimore and got admitted to Harvard Law School without interviewing, just a force of nature, and understanding what he meant and, kind of the road that he showed. We need to start young and training people for leadership.
Well, it starts with planting the seed. And Guy, thank you for not only planting the seed, but bringing corporate board diversity into full bloom. This has been a great conversation. Really enjoyed spending this time with you.
Well, Derek, it's good to see you, and I'm looking forward to getting together in person.
We will make that happen as soon as possible. But
right.
Once again, thank you for being a part of Boardroom Chats. And I look forward to talking to you a few months from now to see if you've made that 100 goal or even surpassed that goal.
Yeah, let's hope. Fingers crossed, and kind of nose to the grindstone.
Thank you.
Take care.